Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Tuesday, May the 20th, 2025 session in our series on entrepreneurship in Asian high-tech industries. As always, I want to thank the member companies of the U.S. Asia Technology Management Center. It's their support that allows us to put on this program. And especially today, we have an outdoor reception in the Littlefield courtyard. It's a little bit further away than our usual post-seminar snacks, but the food's worth it. So go to the Littlefield courtyard and meet a lot of our alumni and a lot of our other local contacts here and some people visiting from overseas. We'd be delighted to have you join us from about 6 o'clock until 7:30 or whenever this evening. Tomorrow, we have our annual meeting of the U.S. Asia Technology Management Center. It is completely open to the public. Please see one of our people down front here if you can attend so that they can give you the information on location and so forth. But it will be 4:30 to 7:30. Besides a kind of strategic overview and a keynote by Dr. Bruce Ling of the medical school at Stanford, who is doing very interesting genomics-related data analytics for disease prediction. We'll have special presentations by some of our research collaborators, and then we'll have presentations by some of our current visiting scholars about the research that they're engaged in with us. So that should be fun. Today, I'm delighted to be able to welcome back a dear colleague and friend who I guess I've known for close to 15 years now. Dr. Amit Kapoor is the honorary chairman of the Institute for Competitiveness in India. And the Institute for Competitiveness is a think tank that does various high-profile policy reports and other kinds of reporting in India. Dr. Kapoor wrote the Competitiveness Roadmap for India. We've collaborated with Dr. Kapoor on some things, including a report on India's chairmanship of the G20 of nations a couple of years ago. And also, Dr. Kapoor is engaged in a number of different capacities. He teaches at a number of universities. We have been able to have him teach at Stanford. In fact, he and I co-developed a course called Rebalancing Economic Systems in an Era Driven by Technology. So it's a real pleasure to be able to welcome you back on a short trip from India. Talk to us about innovation and entrepreneurship in India at state level.
Thank you. Thank you, Richard. It is absolutely a pleasure to be here today. Incidentally, it's been an honor of a lifetime to have actually collaborated with Richard on so many aspects. So special thanks to him and special thanks to two people sitting in the front here, Brian and Kimberly, who have been the co-conspirators or my partners in crime in doing so many interesting things out here. But today what I'm really going to do is I'm talking about entrepreneurship in India a little bit, but more from an innovation perspective and what happens within the states in India. So that is what I'm really talking about. So, like Richard had threatened me that I can only speak for about 30 to 35 minutes. So I have this huge slide deck of about 45 slides. I'll try to rush through some of them. The slide deck would be made available. So if you want to go dig deeper, you could certainly do. But this is a presentation which is based on my work using governmental data or possibly working with the government, which includes the Prime Minister's think tank, with various ministries in the government of India, and so on and so forth. Incidentally, I also do the innovation index for the country. So for that, on that innovation index, we actually try to look at the states and how performance of states actually happen. So this is where I'm pulling up some of the data. But if you really want to understand regional disparity or understanding India, you need to understand the regional disparity and how it actually drives entrepreneurship and innovation in the country. So India's innovation and entrepreneurship activity, if you really look at it, is very heavily concentrated in a certain set of regions. And when you say heavily concentrated in certain set of regions, it would be the city states, say Delhi, or the city locations. So it could be Bangalore, Pune, Hyderabad, Chinchwad, Pimpri, etc. Those are the set of locations where innovation actually happens. So this also tells us a huge story that there could be a yawning gap that exists in innovation capacity or innovation performance across different set of states. And if you really look at it, innovation outcomes, as we clearly understand and know, is driven by human capital investment in knowledge systems, etc. So there is a large set of things that actually matter for creating an innovation ecosystem, and that is what we really try to assess here. But India's ambitions of becoming a global innovation leader depends on unlocking things across the states and districts. Let me give you a very interesting statistic. When you talk about India, India is very, very heterogeneous as a country. A very simple statistic, which can be startling for a lot of people. India can be broken down into 760 or 769 districts, or what you're calling as counties here. Out of those 760 districts that you really talk about, 100 districts contribute close to about 90% of India's GDP. So that means 660 districts are just contributing about 10% of India's GDP. So the whole huge economic activity gets what I call within a few specific areas or regions, and they're clearly dominated by the city districts, so cities or urbanized districts of the country. So that is a very interesting thing that we can actually find out. But if you really look at regional disparities reflected in statewide GDP contributions as well. You really want to understand India's growth story. India has, of course, been growing at a very scorching pace, as a lot of people would want to think and believe, at about 7%, which is decent. But from my point of view, India needs to continue to grow at about much larger pace of about 11 to 12% if it needs to solve for its population and job creation, or the population that it actually has. So we need to grow at about 11% to solve for the economic issues that we face, especially the job issues. But having said that, when you talk about India, there are about 8 states which define India's economic prosperity. There are 37 locations or 37 states and union territories, as you would look at. So 29 major states, but out of those, 8 states define the economic activity within the country, or the how things are really happening. So if you really look at this number, so the states of Gujarat, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Uttar Pradesh, West Bengal, etc., contribute close to about 65% of India's GDP. Rest of the states contribute close to about 35%. But if you really look at the Northeast, which is close to about 8 states, which is Assam plus the 7 sisters, they contribute just about 3% of India's GDP. So what we are really seeing here is that India has a huge diverse landscape, as you would want to understand that location. And then, of course, the regional disparities are reflected further at the GDP per capita levels as well within the country. If you really look deeper in terms of understanding as to where economic prosperity is happening, you can see that it is happening towards the upper end states on the right-hand side. So you would see that there are states like Haryana, Telangana, Gujarat, Karnataka, which are the top performing states. That is where the per capita GDP income is fairly high. This is where I would like to share something very interesting with you. That India actually is a very large country, 1.4, 1.5 billion people. We've not had a census for the last 15 years, so we do not know what is the exact population, but should be close to about 1.4 to 1.5 billion people. But if you really talk about these 1.5 billion people, there's a very interesting statistic here. And that statistic is that at what levels would you become top 1% or a top 10% of India's population? And why do I want to talk about this data in an entrepreneurship or an innovation session? Because when you are actually at a cusp of a high income level, that is when you start driving or striving for innovative products. There is always a punctuation point, or there is a tipping point when people start demanding innovative products, if you reach at a certain per capita levels. I'll share that data with you as well. But having said that, when you talk about India per se, you breach the top 10% mark if you make 32,000 rupees a month. On present exchange rates, that roughly is about $370 per month. You breach the top 1% on salary levels in India if you make 90,000 rupees a month. That roughly translates to about $1,100 in today's parlance. So $1,100 a month, you breach the top 1%. So we are a very unique country, which looks, as an aggregate, we are very, very rich. We are possibly the fourth or the fifth largest economy, close to about $4.1 to $4.3 trillion. We're the fourth largest, the fifth largest, but from a population perspective, we are ranked 92nd in the world. So on per capita basis, we are 92nd in the world. So these are some interesting statistics that you need to understand and dig deeper. But yes, but there are some huge positives that have actually happened in India over the last few years. If you really look at the India's progress in Global Innovation Index, what we have seen is that India has progressed quite significantly over the last decade and a half. If you really look at 2015 data, India was ranked 81st in 2015 to what we are really today. We are ranked at about 39th in 2024 on the Global Innovation Index. That means India has performed well. It has been able to create a certain ecosystem which pushes forward with the innovation journey that the country is actually having. But there are also disparities at subnational level on innovation capacities. As we were talking about heterogeneity in India, you would also notice that most of the innovation and most of the entrepreneurial activity that happens within the country happens at a certain state itself. That again, no marks for guessing it right. These are high income states, and these are the 8 states that we were actually talking about. So same states like Maharashtra, Karnataka, Andhra, Tamil Nadu, etc. That is what it's driving. But when I said that there is a tipping point, like recently I actually did a very interesting body of work wherein we wanted to compare the American states, the US states, and the Indian states and see how they perform on innovation capacities. Of course, for lack of data, either from the US side or the Indian side, we compared the US and the Indian states at about 14 indicators and trying to see as to what is happening. So what we did find is that if you really look at the top, there are 87 states that we ranked, because 37 Indian locations and 50 American locations or US locations. What could be the guess in terms of what is the first state that India actually has? So the highest ranking Indian state was 51st. So this is something very startling. So where the US, so even the worst performing US state is actually better than the best performing Indian state in terms of innovative capacity. And that too is a city state. So the state of Delhi, which is a city location, because cities perform very differently when aggregation happens. And that is where Delhi performs the best, but it is again 51st on that list. But as we were talking about the tipping point, there's something very interesting that happens here. So when you're close to about $40,000 to $50,000, that is when you will see the overall index scores really tapering off, and that is when innovation starts happening. So India has a long journey to go at a certain level when innovation capacities will change and when innovation will start happening. Again, I will talk about innovation because there would be a lot of people who will believe that India is a fairly innovative country. I totally, absolutely, vehemently disagree with that point, but we can come back to that as we go ahead. And if you really look at employment in STEM occupations, so share of workers employed in STEM occupations, this is the set of data that you would see. Again, something very interesting. A lot of people would always talk about exceptional labor quality in India. Or exceptional availability of labor. Yes, we do have the highest number of engineers that we produce, close to about a million plus engineers every year. But there's something very interesting that we need to understand here. The interesting data point is that there is something called as occupation level 1, 2, 3, and 4 within the Indian context. And when you say skill level 1, 2, 3, 4, or occupation 1, 2, 3, 4, 3 and 4 are the higher level occupations or skill sets, which includes people who are graduates and over. So that is about 9.83% of India's population or working age population. 9.83% is skill level 3 and 4. Rest are actually 91% or close to 90-point-some% is occupation level 1 and 2. That means they're underskilled set of people who actually are there. So and why is skilling going to be very important? Skilling becomes exceedingly important when you have to drive innovation. So that is something very interesting in terms of the data point. But the startling fact on that 9.83% is that out of that, 53% of the people are underemployed as of today. How do we really look at this situation and how do we solve for it, or are the answers that we have to look at? Then the quality of universities, share of top 100 universities in each country. Something very interesting, again, what you would notice is, and this is country level data. This is not, I'm saying that these are the top ranking universities across the world or whatever. I'm talking about the top universities in that country and where are they present. So what we notice is that there is a huge spatial distribution that happens within the United States. But in India, that spatial distribution is fairly reduced. What we notice is close to about 20% of the top universities in India are in one single state itself. 22% happens in two states of Maharashtra and Tamil Nadu, and that is where it is. And these are the set of locations which do perform better on innovation index as well. So this leads us to a very important point, and that is that wherever educational institutions are doing better, or the concentration is there, or better outputs are there, that is where innovation capacity would be higher. US has been able to spatially distribute it much better, without a doubt. So we need to really find a way to do that as well. R&D expenditure as percentage of GDP, this is something very interesting. And this is where I always say that India needs to really do something very different. Like it becomes a pet peeve for a lot of people to really curse the government in terms of saying that the government has not been performing. But in this case, in case of innovation in R&D, you have to realize that it is government which has been performing, and the biggest non-performing asset in the country is called the corporate sector. So, this is the startling fact, like close to about 70% of India's R&D expenditure comes through the government, and 30% comes from the private sector. In the United States, it's very, very different. 78% of the R&D expenditure comes from the private sector. So what we are seeing out there in India is that the private sector is only looking at fairly revenue maximization, exploitation possibly, or creating models which are fairly mundane, boring, or whatever, or copycat models of what is actually happening in the United States. Yes, you have an Uber, we create an Ola, which is exactly a replica and not worthy of any praise or whatsoever. Recently, the Commerce Minister made a statement against this whole thing that is happening, that you're copying models, and everybody went after his life. But I do fundamentally agree with the Commerce Minister that he's right in terms of saying that Indian businesses have not created unique business models. They're very boring, very staid. In fact, they're not inspiring at all. Incidentally, the models that you actually, celebrate as well, Infosys is an enterprise, which is the big daddy of outsourcing, is again a model which is based on exploitation of labor, not on usage of talent. So those are the set of issues that need to be looked at. But India's R&D, it's still waiting for that inflection point to happen. When would that happen is a question that we need to really push for, or we need to find an answer to. Possibly that inflection point will happen when our per capita incomes are going to be much higher. Our per capita incomes, I suspect that once we reach close to about $10,000 as per capita income, which is close to about $2,600, $2,700 right now, possibly in the next 10 years to next 15 years, that is when that whole innovation capacity or fundamental questions of innovation will start happening, and investment in innovation will start happening. This is the patent landscape. So again, I thought I'll just share something very simple with you in terms of like from where is the patent actually happening, or where is the patent data coming from. So Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, Uttar Pradesh is where patenting is actually coming from. But human capital. So like this is one of the issues that we need to understand, the gross enrollment ratios that you really talk about. As to where is India right now on the gross enrollment ratios? Is it increasing? In fact, we have a target that we should be close to about 50% as gross enrollment ratio, but we are close to about just 28% right now. Can we achieve that in 10 years? Possible. But again, there's something very startling that is happening, that post-COVID, what we have seen is that our gross enrollment ratios have actually gone down. So there are those set of issues that or they have remained static that we need to be really understood and seen. But subnational disparities in GER or gross enrollment ratios are also there that you would see. So there are going to be certain states which are going to be laggard, and there are going to be certain states which actually perform better. Highly skilled workforce. This is again that I was talking about as to the occupation level, skill level 1, 3, and 4. What you see is that, yes, they are again distributed across the country. And this is from the periodic labor force survey data that the government of India actually comes out. So all the statistics that I'm giving to you here are from the government of India survey data. and the analysis that we have been able to do on top of it. So if you really look at the occupation skill level 4, so Maharashtra, Karnataka, Kerala have the highest percentage of skill level 4 people. That means that is where educated talent actually exists, or that is where the educated talent is actually concentrated. So that is what we need to really see. So STEM graduates, again, the question is that whether STEM is important or not. The larger thing is there are challenges to the Indian education system. We have focused on an education system which is for specialized institutions. So we have the IITs, we have the IIMs, etc. Nothing wrong in that. They're great institutions. Some of them, yes, certainly they are great institutions. But what we need to do is possibly we need to create much robust ecosystem-driven university kind of structure, with much more like Stanford, wherein you're, or much more like Harvard's, wherein you're able to have multidisciplinary or cross-disciplinary collaborations that are possible. Because from my point of view, the next driver for innovation is going to be collaboration of different schools of thought. It is not going to be that you are just going to be a physics graduate or you are going to be just a science, biology graduate, because you will be learning from various schools of thought. You will be concoctions and then find some solutions. So something called as the Medici effect, if you might want to actually name it. Again, when you talk about attracting the world, or how 5 states dominate India's FDI landscape, again, when we wanted to understand this whole performance of India and its innovation capacity and its economic performance, its competitiveness, what we do find is, where is FDI going to get attracted? Where is investment going to happen? Investment will always get attracted to locations wherein you know that you are able to perform, you're able to innovate, you're able to get something out of it, you're able to get those returns. And that is what you notice here as well. So the top states where 86% of FDI flows into just about 5 states within the country. No marks again for guessing it right. It is Maharashtra, Karnataka, Gujarat, Delhi, and Tamil Nadu. So what you would notice here is that India's economic story, innovation story, entrepreneurship story is just getting focused on about 6 to 8 locations. And that is what needs to be looked at or understood. This is something on geographical indicators. I'll not talk much here, but I'll just leave it for you guys. But entrepreneurship and business ecosystems, if you really look at it, what are the active companies that are there? So if you really look at drivers of concentration, dominate. So what are the states that are dominating the places where you have this active number of companies? So you would see that Delhi, Uttar Pradesh, Karnataka, West Bengal dominate the registered active companies, reflecting a historical basis. You've also seen over a period of time, like say West Bengal, if you understand India very well, at the time of partition, West Bengal was possibly one of the most active business locations in the country, really getting relegated to not such a huge performing location right now. But yes, what we do see is that there is a lot of concentration that is happening here as well. Again, from Government of India data. But if you really look at the business ecosystem, so new business creation trends at the subnational level, what you would notice is that, again, new business creation is again happening at these 2 states itself, most of it. That is Maharashtra and Karnataka. So if you really look at it, close to about 55 to 60% of new business creation is happening in 2 locations. Maharashtra, it has a city of Bombay, Pune, that drives that. When you talk about Karnataka, you'll have what I call Bangalore, which is going to be driving that. So that is what you see, that whole concentration is happening at these locations. So from policy to progress, how states are powering India's startup ecosystem, there is something very exciting that is happening right now. That India has moved from close to about 500 startups to about close to 160,000 startups. But now the question is that how successful those startups are, how they're really growing over a period of time. Some of them have done exceedingly well, without a doubt. But we need to understand that how do we define a startup? Is anything and everything that happens as a startup or whatever? There can always be those debates. But what I'm saying here is that yes, startup ecosystem is actually improvised over a period of time. But number of unicorns, if I really want to understand unicorns as a measure of success, this is something very exciting. Again, like 2016, you had about 11 unicorns. 2024, you have about 118 unicorns in India. Nowhere close to where United States or where China is. But yes, we have seen that growth happen over a period of time. But I think this is where we have to understand that India, performs much lower than its weight that it actually has. If it is the fifth largest or the fourth largest economy in the world, I would suspect that it should be far higher, far better, or we need to actually move into that direction. And when you talk about the startup ecosystem at the subnational level, so top 5 highlighted states account for over 55% of India's DPIIT recognized startup ecosystem as well. So out of those 160,000 enterprises, 55% are happening in 5 states itself. Again, a story of concentration that happens. But India's unicorns and business model. This is one interesting story that I thought I should share with you. Like in India, we've always been this absolutely obsessed with the idea of celebrating heroes in enterprises which have not really performed very well. I named Infosys for a while, or a little bit earlier. And why do I say that? Like when you talk about economies will always grow on a certain stages. So it is going to be something what you would call as factor-driven, efficiency-driven, or innovation-driven economies. That's a whole Porterian view, which has been used by the World Economic Forum as a way of thinking and creating their index as well. But when you talk about something like Infosys, it is a factor-driven enterprise, labor arbitrage. So when you create business models on labor arbitrage, they are not really going to take you anywhere, because they are not innovative per se. A lot of people could actually say it created a lot of jobs, etc. Yes, they do create jobs, but it also exposes the underutilization of resources. Similarly, there are these new age firms that happened. Byju's was a very interesting example, which got into about $22 billion as valuation at one point in time, to possibly a valuation of zero at this stage. So it is a total wipeout that actually happened, where it came up very strongly during the time of COVID, possibly wrong practices, not understanding the market right, and that is what did happen. But Zomato, so like these food delivery services are something very exciting, very, very popular within India. So Zomato is a food delivery service wherein you're able to, order from restaurants. He's also created something similar for delivery of products from stores, or what you would call as mom and pop stores or whatever. They create their own dark stores, but they deliver goods for your household, what you would typically buy from Trader Joe's, etc. But the problem with this model is that, yes, these are interesting models. They give opportunity to people, but it also exposes the underbelly, and that is that it exposes the underbelly of exploitation of the labor who's delivering those products. So what happens is a person who's delivering the product to you, he will get 200 rupees, that is $3 for making 19 deliveries in a day. So is that great? Not at all. So that is what it is. So it exposes the income, and the charge disparities that exist. Because as a customer, I'm charged 16 rupees for a delivery. So that means for 220 deliveries, the company is charging 320, but ends up paying much lesser to the person. So there are those issues that actually emerge. So whether we need to really look at these models or not, should we celebrate these models? I don't think so. We should be celebrating these models. We need to actually go somewhere else. We can always debate this issue, but my point of view possibly is very similar to what Piyush had actually said on that. Piyush is the Commerce Minister in India. And then, of course, how regional disparity reflects at a deeper level. Very quickly, I think I'll not take more than 5 more minutes, but regional disparity within states across the place. So if you really look at Karnataka, so the information technology, so state level performance, what you would notice is Karnataka performs very well, but you would also notice that in Karnataka, there are certain locations where Bangalore performs the best. So this is the data wherein I went dig deeper to understand as to what is happening. Similarly, for Maharashtra, you would notice that in Maharashtra, there are just about 3 or 4 locations where the performance is happening. So same set of things that will happen across the world. So this is not something which is unique to India. This happens across the world. This is the typical thing that will happen in the United States as well, but in a different level, different set of numbers, etc. And so if you really look at the Gujarat performance as well, little more stable, they have a much better economic model for that to say. So you would notice that there are 5 locations which on the chemical industry, Gujarat is one of the largest chemical bases in India, or that is where the concentration of chemical units or processing units exist. So they are all concentrated in about 5 districts in the state. But like as we were talking about it, this is where Richard gave me a challenge. And the challenge was that, like we recently, both of us have been working on this very interesting, exciting project to understand the Kumbh. So we've just finalized our book on the Kumbh called The Rise of the Transient City. And this is where I thought, like, can we understand something as to what is happening within the country in terms of entrepreneurial spirit, etc. Like you have to understand that the entrepreneurial spirit in India is very high. And if you come to the Kumbh, which is a festival of the poor, a lot of people would want to, because any one of you who's living here and who was actually watching the Kumbh videos, you were being shown video that, oh, everything's, there's all that richness that is happening. I totally disagree with those set of videos. Yes, that was a part of the story as well, but it's a festival of 90% of the country, which does not have large disposable income, etc. But having said that, this is a confluence that happens in a state called Prayagraj. As a matter of fact, I would just like to share with you what could be the per capita income of Prayagraj. India's per capita income is $2,400, and the per capita income in Prayagraj is close to about $800. So the location where this thing was happening was something which was not doing exceedingly well from an economic performance. But what we did see is, because of the Kumbh, there was a huge uptick in economic performance of that location. So you can look at innovation or driving some kind of a ecosystem development using festivities and using tourism as well. And that is where this whole case study is all about. So it's an opportunity or a recognition of a temporal nature. It's a temporary city that gets created. Close to about 66 crore, that is 660 million dips happened in that location. 660 million dips means that how many times people went under the water or whatever. 660 million dips happened. How many people were there? Possibly close to about 160 to 200 million people who took those 660 million dips. I've
got to interrupt because that's almost the population of the United States, maybe 70% of the population of the entire United States going to one city within a 45-day period.
Absolutely. So look at the concentration that happened. And what happened here when suddenly everybody thronged, let's assume that 200 billion people came to that location. United States is 350 million. So as Richard was saying, 70% of United States comes there. They would spend some money. And once they spend some money, there are unique models that get created. There are unique delivery models that actually get created in that service process, because it's a transient city wherein you just have that location for about 45 days. It's just will vanish. Within that location, like there is this guy or a family from the community of boatsmen. The kind of money that they made taking people on the boat in the river was crazy. So the money that he made, which he has publicly announced, is 30 crores. So 30 crores roughly translates to about $4 million as profit. Just being a boat, so about 150 people who were doing the boat rides for people made close to about $4 million in 45 days. So those are the set of things. So when you talk about this whole innovation thing as well, so we also have to understand, this is a very salient point, that innovation doesn't necessarily mean it only has to be technology. It can actually be innovative business models that actually can get created for a country like India, which has low resource setting, lower disposable incomes, but you could do so much with creating some unique business models delivery that have to be looked at. So these are some of the things that come across from the Kumbh. But if you want to really understand this better, we are going to be doing a session on the 30th of this month, wherein I am going to share deeper insights on this at the Council General's thing on the 30th. So you're most welcome to join in. But what you can see is some examples. There is this guy called Chetram who was just making an Indian delicacy of a bhatura chana. I do not know how to actually say it in English. It's chickpeas and a certain kind of bread. So Indians out here will understand what it is. But this guy did something crazy. Like he made lakhs of rupees, which is thousands of dollars on that location, just selling chickpeas and bread. And because just people just loved it. And because his whole thing was that how does he actually create a mechanism to make sure that his supply chain works? And he just created that mechanism for making that supply chain work. But these are some of the ideas that I thought I'll share with you in a very quick way. Richard, I've kept my promise of 35 minutes. Thanks for the opportunity, and over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Executive privilege and ask the first couple of questions. So this urban concentration of innovation activities is a worldwide phenomenon. If you looked at a map of the United States, the difference between Silicon Valley and the Boston area and a few other big cities and what's going on in rural areas, even in California, is huge. Why is that a problem?
I don't think that is a problem at all. What I'm saying is that in a place like United States,
Yeah.
if you really look at the spread, the income levels that happen for people out here, the per capita incomes, and the availability of services, they are very different from the per capita incomes that we have in India.
Yeah.
So how do we really take those level of services across the board? Because income levels will also define whether people are able to buy those services or maintain those services. In the US, that is definitely possible. Having said that, US does see a huge level of concentration, but it is not as strong as we see within the Indian context. You do see that there are locations like, say, California, you have Arizona, you have what I call the whole east belt from Washington to what I call New York to Boston. So that whole belt, which is a huge concentration of medical enterprises and things. So, but there is this whole huge belt that happens within the United States as well. But it is more spread. Innovation is more spread here because you've been able to create those locations. So like the rise of Texas as an innovation place, or even the rise of, say, Arizona as a location, like where most of the guys are going. Of course, it is supported by incentives that exist. So can India afford to give those incentives? There are those developmental debates that will happen. Maybe India cannot do that. But India needs to create the ecosystem within the states to really create that traction.
So I would have to, okay, you're a good friend, so I'm going to disagree with you a little bit. I think it is a problem, maybe not so much from the standpoint of economic theory, but from the standpoint of government policy and the kind of decisions that might be made. Do you promote the success of the successful places, or do you try to raise the level for all people? We've had a situation in which massive amounts of wealth have transferred from the bottom 95% of people in the United States to the top 5%. And this has led to, arguably, depending on who you support, too much money going into social services or not enough money going into social services. And it's hard to tell. One of the things that I'll turn this into a question for you, because I don't think there's really an answer to this situation, is what kind of sense of opportunity do people have? How does that vary regionally? Because I think that if you feel like you have an opportunity to benefit from trying to do something new, then there really is no trouble with the system.
Yeah. So, Richard, I don't think we disagree. We are effectively on the same page.
Yeah.
So when I'm saying is that, like the distribution is going to happen. It does happen. That's a natural process of, say, how economic systems actually grow over a period of time.
Yeah.
And this is exactly what we have been talking about in our work as well. When we are saying as to how do we create an economic system which is much more spread out? How do we find a way that growth is spread equally across different sets of locations? Can government play favorites? I don't think so. And it should not. Well, because the central government or the federal government cannot play favorite. It has to see that equitable distribution of growth happens across the country. It wants to make sure that its people have good quality of life across the board. It wants economic growth to happen across the board, yes. But
Of course, I'll smile by saying what's equitable, right? But
yes, of course. We can always get into that thing.
Yeah.
I'm not going to answer that question here in this forum, but I have an answer to that, and I have a point of view on that. But what we need to do here is that how do we make sure that growth happens across the board? Exactly to the point what I said in the beginning. 100 districts answer for about 90% of India's GDP. Can we say that it has to be much more better spread out? That means when you are talking about 660 districts, they're just doing about 10% of India's GDP. That means there are those economically dark areas. If they're economically dark, how do I bring economic activity to those locations? How do I make sure? Because if they are not going to be economically active, that means there are going to be stalling of social services. There would be stalling of economic, what I call newer set of institutions coming there or whatever. So other things will not happen. So you possibly create those ecosystems and make sure that economic activity happens in those locations. There's a very interesting example of how India did it. And it has given positive results as well. There is something called as the Aspirational Districts Program. So the government of India identified the bottom 100 districts, worst performing districts in the country. So once they identified those districts, they said they need to bring the quality of life or the ease of living of citizens in these locations to amongst the best in the country. What the thing is, it has yielded results. And what we have seen is that locations which were doing very badly on social indicators, once they started improving on those social indicators, that is when economic activity also started getting attracted to a certain extent. In fact, on this study, I should give some data to you. For every one additional year of education in India, and I'm talking about Indian data here, after class 8th, so I think you call it class 8.
eighth grade.
8th grade. So after 8th grade, for every additional year of schooling, you actually gain something like 8,000 rupees per year as additional income. That means you will gain about $100 as additional income per year for every additional year of schooling. And what we did notice is that locations where schooling outcomes were better, you would see these effects coming through. But now the challenge is that you have to continuously rotate those 100 districts, because there are 100 districts, out of those 50 have now got elevated up. You have to identify those 100. So it is a continuous cycle. So the government will have to continuously work on these set of things or initiatives to move forward. I think hats off to the government for doing that aspirational program. Incidentally, the person who designed that program is my co-author. I do not know if you know of him, that is Amit. And we did this whole thing to understand it a little better and see.
Yeah, Dr. Kant is a minister level official who is in charge of the G20 in India. So I have a question in from Zoom that is actually good at this point, especially in your discussion of the experience and this whole regional differences. How does that fit with, there was a very famous book written about 20 years ago called The Bottom of the Pyramid by Dr. C.K. Prahalad. And it really had to do with the idea that real opportunity from now was not going to be to serve the people who already had money, but to make life better for the 80% of the people in the world who are not well off financially. So what do you see in regard to bottom of the pyramid in India?
So like when CK and when Stuart Hart did this work on bottom of the pyramid, like it was a very significant way of really looking at as to how can we create economic opportunities for people who do not have huge disposable incomes. So rather than saying that they're bottom of the pyramid, I'll say these are people who are having lesser disposable income, or they have a much more, their concentration of spending happens on very basic sets of services. So India still drives on that whole logic. If you understand those bottom of the pyramid numbers, or what you would call as the disposable income. So India becomes a sachet market. India becomes a small size market for a lot of things. So if you want to, if any one of you smokes or has something like a mouth freshener or what you call as chewing tobacco, so wrong place to talk about these things, but I should share something very interesting that happens in India. for smoking, like when you talk about US, you have to buy a complete pack of cigarettes. In India, you're able to buy one cigarette from a normal shop. That means they have been able to break down or disaggregate products. If you want to buy a mouth freshener, you're able to buy something for 5 rupees or even 2 rupees from a local pawn shop or a local shop there or whatever, and you can buy it for 2 rupees. You want to buy a pair of something like a shampoo, you're able to buy shampoo which is going to last you for 3 times for 5 rupees, which is possibly just about how many cents? 5 rupees would be about 8 cents.
6 cents.
6 cents. So you're able to buy that shampoo. So because he can't buy it together, you will buy it in one go. Very interestingly, you know, like there was a huge thing called as a mosquito repellent. India's has a lot of mosquitoes. So you created this product called Good Night. Good Night was a product which was a repellent wherein you had to spend something like 100 rupees or $1.50 for a 45-day period. But now then the company realized that this is possibly not going to work in India because a lot of people will not want to spend 100 rupees together. So what they did was they actually created a small tablet which lasts for 8 hours. You burn it and it just burns for about 8 hours and it actually just makes your location clean of mosquitoes or whatever, and they were selling it for 1 rupee. So that is 1/80th of a dollar. So you created those models. So that works, still beautifully works in India. It will continue to work in India. But I would, again, as an economist or as a person who loves the country, I love my country, and I think I would like to see a day wherein people are able to spend more. They have better disposable incomes. They're able to buy things together. And again, I don't want to, Costcoization of India should not happen. I totally disagree with the Costco model as well. There is absolutely bulk obsessive purchase of things. But something little different or whatever, it should happen. And I would love to see that.
For people who have lots of storage space, right?
Yes.
So with regard to the 115 or 116 unicorns that are now in India, are they mostly serving the India market, or are they kind of like Infosys, something worldwide?
I think most of them are serving Indian markets right
So
now.
that's kind of a new thing.
Yes. Because Indian market, if you really look at it, it has been so nascent in terms of new models. I've been criticizing the model like Zomato or whatever, but that model actually gives huge, opportunity to create growth, a huge opportunity to deliver to people. And you are seeing those sets of services really emerge and at multiple levels. So it's a local, because India, we have to understand, is underserved market in terms of a lot of solutions. So if you're able to create those solutions for India, if you're able to innovate on that, it just skyrockets. It just really builds up.
So you said a few things, and I know you well, and so I think you're kind of intentionally saying things that are kind of outlandish.
Of course.
Like,
That's to provoke people.
Right. That basically most of the companies are not innovative. And you had this point about corporates are not a big part of gross expenditure on R&D in India. Also, I guess my kind of comeback to that is you don't take risks if you can make money without taking risks. And so being able to have a profitable business that doesn't have a foreseeable end to it, where you can see growth continuing, how can you encourage people to be innovative when they can get by without it?
So, like Richard, this is a very important question, and for which we have always wanted to find an answer. At least I don't have an answer, but again, a question for the larger audience as well and for people to answer. That at least I can see 10, 12 Indians or people of Indian origin in this audience. Quite likely, most of you are working in the software industry, or at least the technology industry. My question that arises is that all of you, or quite a lot of you, got educated in India, and you came here and you did something very exciting, interesting in terms of working for an enterprise like Microsoft, or creating something unique at Microsoft or Apple or wherever, or Meta, and create an obnoxious product like Twitter or Facebook or whatever you call it. I dislike those products. That's a separate issue. That's a separate debate. I think they should all be banned because they're actually making people dumb. So that's where it is. But sorry for saying it, but that's a fact. So, like the bonoboization of humanity is being driven by Meta, by that is Facebook, WhatsApp, then Twitter, and that's where it is. But coming back to your point, oh, shit, I just forgot.
How do you encourage people to become innovative, to focus on innovation?
Yeah, so the question was that why is it that when you produce so many engineers in India, you're not able to create your Microsoft? Why are you not able to create that in India is a question. So, like my question is like 1979, there were two companies that were created. One is called Microsoft, the other one is called Infosys. Right? I don't deny the fact that Infosys is a great company. I also don't want to deny, but you can't simply deny the fact that Microsoft is possibly one of the greatest enterprises that the US has possibly seen. From my point of view, you could disagree with me, but one individual was donated close to about $200 billion of wealth for purposes of humanity. But why is it that you've not been able to create what I call Microsoft in India? Skype as a product, which was bought by Microsoft, was created by two university students in Tallinn.
Estonia.
Yes, in Tallinn there.
Yeah.
Why is it that we have not been able to do it? So these are smart people who come here and perform so well. Why is it that I'm not able to make these smart people perform exactly the same way that they're performing here? Why is it that I'm not able to make sure that these smart people can come back home and be there and contribute? But can't we do that? Like, like there's something very interesting. Like a lot of you might think here, 94% of Indians who come to the United States for higher education stay back. Only 6% go back. Why does that happen? Why can't I actually create an ecosystem in my country wherein we say that let's create something unique? There is an exciting place. There is a lot of wealth that can get created. We can create an ecosystem wherein you're able to create something unique. Why is it? Dropbox is a solution. It looks like a very mundane solution, right? But it happens here, but not in India. And possibly made by some Indian engineer as well. Possible. Yes.
Now,
Richard is the boss here.
Comments to this point, right?
Yes, I would like to answer his question.
Go ahead.
In the year 2000, I gave the first talk in the first international display conference ever held in mainland China. And at that time, there was only one very, very small company manufacturing liquid crystal displays in all of mainland China. And I was confronted with the question, who is going to become the major producer? Would it be China or India? And it was China. And the reason it was China invested the money to become #1 in that industry, which they are today.
Okay, and a lot of that is
my friends who tried to start a laser scanning company based on his US technology. He was a Pakistani who came to India in the partition. He could not successfully start his company because he could not obtain the licenses required, and he did not pay off the people who he would have had to pay off in order to get these licenses. So that's my twofold answer to your question. Why Indians in the US are among the leaders in our industry.
Oh, yes,
Okay,
I
thank
respect
you.
that point. I absolutely respect the point that you're saying. No disagreements there. In fact, I would just like to substantiate something and the cause for concern here on this data. 1990, India and China were exactly at the same level of GDP, aggregated GDP, even GDP per capita. And then the divergence suddenly happened. And the divergence is huge that we have actually seen. It'll take ages for India to catch up. And that we have to presume that China has to stop for India to catch up, because China will continue to grow without a doubt. China created that ecosystem or whatever. possibly corruption, as you're effectively saying. Yes, we've had those issues, or what you would, if not corruption, I think red tape. As bureaucratic hurdles that India has actually seen as something very, very startling. They have been removed over a period of time, but they're still very painful. We need to find a way to dismantle those hurdles. You know, like the rise of the IT industry in India, there has always been this debate. Did it happen because of the government, or it happened just like that? It happened because the government was not interfering. Because wherever government has interfered in India, those industries have effectively stalled. So if you are able to let them open, if you're able to let ideas flow, kids in India are smart, people in India are smart, without a doubt. You just have to let them free. You have to let them perform. But we stall that whole process. We curtail their creativity. We curtail their possibilities. We curtail the whole thing because the whole compliance burden that exists can actually be very, very intimidating. It has reduced in the last 10, 15 years. But that compliance burden used to be what I call appalling. About when you were in, say, 1990s. When I was a young kid, if I wanted to be an entrepreneur, my parents would have actually just jumped with joy. In terms like they would have just effectively said like, what a dumb idiot you are. Because that's what it would have been.
I remember back then we had one American VC talking about India who said that she spent half her time trying to convince parents of children of young people that wanted to start companies that it would be okay for their child to start a company. I want to kind of come back a little bit though. There have been very successful startup companies in India. You mentioned Zomato, but things like Paytm, Flipkart that was bought by Walmart, or I think, and so for $15 billion. So maybe these are not innovative in the sense of advanced technology or a brand new business model, but they certainly did a good job of growing the company.
Oh yes, absolutely, Richard. So you're like, this leads us to that important point in terms of how do we want to look at innovation per se? Is it business, whatever you call innovation in terms of tech innovation, business model innovation, business process innovation, or whatever? So what we have seen in India is some unique business models getting created. Zomato is a great example. Flipkart is a great example. Flipkart was bought over by Walmart. Of course, Walmart has tried its best to run it to the ground. That's a separate issue. But they have done that. So
Paytm actually
and
expanded
Paytm,
all over Asia.
So Paytm has been doing well, but it of course got into regulatory hurdles in the recent past because of some of its business practices, trying to revive back again. So you have had those business models. Byju's is an example wherein it failed. I think it happened much earlier. He just wanted to grow too fast, too quickly. So there have been those passionate things in terms of just growing too much or too fast, too quickly, just over promising, under delivering, and those sort of things as well. But if we are able to maintain or what you call control our horses,
Yeah.
so these models could have actually been far more successful.
Okay. I do want to ask if you see kind of infrastructure changes in India that may improve the situation for this sort of innovation from the bottom up. I'm thinking about the universal payment interface, that kind of thing. Well, that must have been heavily used during the coup.
Oh, yes. So, like the universal payment interface is one of the most disruptive things that has possibly happened in the last 5 or 7 years. If you don't know what universal payment interface is, UPI is a thing wherein you're able to transfer money peer-to-peer kind of a thing, like what you call a Zelle, but at scale, at absolutely scale, wherein everybody is on the system. You're able to transfer money at no charge. So it has given a lot of run for its money to people like MasterCard and Visa. But there's something very unique that has happened. But what happened because of this is that suddenly there was a small vendor. He wanted to sell a product. If he's, say, a vegetable vendor on the street, he could actually take money on the phone itself. And he also started getting into the mainstream economic structure. So suddenly he's having these transactions on his phone. He's now eligible for a loan. So you're able to map as to how things are happening. So it has been a very disruptive thing that has happened. And I think the bigger disruption is not because of the vendors. The bigger disruption happened because of the number of women who went into the banking system because of that thing. So there were close to about 7 crore women, that is roughly 70 million women who got bank accounts and who were able to transact on their phones. And suddenly they were enabled in terms of, they got empowered. And you had this, and if you come to India, you would see that women in the rural hinterland, they got empowered. They suddenly have a lot of voice. They suddenly have a lot of power in their hands to perform. So like India is changing without a doubt. These are some very positive big changes that have actually happened. But again, as I said, it's a journey. It's a marathon. India's on a marathon. It's not a sprint. We will happen definitely, but possibly in the next 20 years, it'll happen in a very, very big way.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Yes, so while I agree with a lot of what you said, and to answer some of your questions, will be a 2-hour discussions. So I'm very passionate about innovation, and
This is why we're doing the party afterward, outside reception from 6 to 7:30 or so. Please go ahead.
And Richard just touched upon it at the last question, and that's what I was bringing is, I think one of the most disruptive innovation coming out of India is not UPI, of course, but the entire stack that has been built. It has leapfrogged anything we have in USA. If somebody understands the technology stack that was built. For example, Zelle has so many, I wouldn't say frauds, but bugs that people's account get closed by the banks. You get money that you did not ask for and your account gets closed. There are like so many complaints about Zelle. In terms of UPI, I haven't seen a fraud rate or anything that's very, very impressive.
So this is a very, very important point. And so you can't look at UPI as a singular thing.
Correct.
So you have to understand that when you were talking about the stack, there was this whole jam trinity. Now there were 3 things that were happening together. And one was what you call as Jan Dhan, which was the unique identification that was happening. The Jan Dhan, that was accounts, Aadhaar was the identification, and mobile, that is this whole thing, the whole penetration of services. And you're able to stack everything on this and make it secure. It was a very, very brilliant thing. And you just were able to make it secure through a very smart public infrastructure that government created. There could always have been debate that whether it should have been owned by the government, not owned by the government, or whatever. I think there was no other way for the government of India to do this. You could not have let a private sector enterprise do it. So it had to be created in a governmental system to protect the data, to protect the people sharing the information that I have. Because effectively, my life's work is on this mobile today, and everything is out here on the system. So they created this whole trinity. So I would request you to read one of my reports that I've done on this, on the jam trinity, as to how this really happened. And
yeah, but when you take an example of innovation at scale, it beats a lot of things Silicon Valley has not been able to do.
Again, please remember, I'm saying it is a governmental driven thing. It's not a private sector driven thing.
But why should we differentiate?
Why should we not? It is not the job of the government to do everything for its citizen. It's also the job of the corporate. Corporate is not sitting there just to exploit the government, just to exploit the resources, underperform, and exploit the poor. So that is, in fact, let me actually just come back to you on this on a very strong sense. Like in India, the challenge is that government does perform. The challenge for me in the country today is that government performs in most of the things. It is the private sector which underperforms on most of the things. Is it that you would like government to do everything? No. The private sector should contribute. Private sector should innovate. If private sector is getting incentivized, why not? We can always get into that, and they are getting benefits for it. They have been having that reduced taxes. They may actually get the ecosystem that the country is producing. Can we create systems wherein they're able to do it? Incidentally, if I ever become a minister, I would really be a pain in the ass for all these corporate sector clients. I'll make life miserable for them. I'll make sure that 50% of their bloody profits are invested back.
So I do think that this is a point for me to kind of read one of the comments on Zoom. In Silicon Valley model of entrepreneurship, the winner takes all. Right for India? If not, then we need to shift the focus from unicorns to more distributed entrepreneurship, such as was shown in the Kumbh.
Oh, definitely. I think so. Unicorns were just, again, like
I had 40 minutes to,
Yeah, right.
we do a complete course on all this. So this was just 40 minutes of that whole information in terms of the distributed thing. So there is something like in India, if you really look at it, as to how the distribution of enterprises actually happens. So there is this missing middle that is there. So missing middle is enterprises which are 500 crores to say 1,000 crores or whatever. We need to create that. So if I'm able to do that, that is great. If I'm able to create entrepreneurial activity, something like what happened at the Kumbh, and create it at scale, and I'm able to create that continuous flow, great. Kumbh has its own sets of challenges. Kumbh is a great example of how a new city comes up, how it creates opportunities, but the challenge is that how much of it can actually get maintained. You will not have people coming. It was just a 45-day festival. It's a transient model, very successful model, but there is also a very positive static model. So if you have seen in India, there is a statue that was created called Statue of Unity in a place called Kevadia. Kevadia is in Gujarat, wherein one of the iconic leaders of India, his statue was created, which is the largest statue there. Close to about 120,000 people go to that location every day. So what has happened because of that, you've been able to create an ecosystem, which is of restaurants, of vendors, or whatever, and they are making money out of it. Close to about 40,000 people in the tribal, it's a tribal belt. So 40,000 people out there have actually been able to get jobs because of this whole thing. So transient has its positives, but from there you learn that if you create permanent infrastructure, you can actually create huge multipliers on this.
So I also think that it will be very interesting, once we have a little bit more time, to see what the people who made the money during Kumbh do with their money. Are they going to pay it forward to really help new things happen and really build up businesses or something, or just be rich people?
Yeah.
I think that's a very good question. Ed, go ahead.
Impact of AI.
Sorry?
What's the impact of AI?
Impact of AI on what?
Government policy, entrepreneurship, the average Indian.
Okay. So on an average Indian, I think I did share something in between on AI. So AI has its positives and negatives, and we have to be very careful with that thing. AI can actually have huge transformational effect on certain set of industries. And if that transformational effect is going to happen on those industries, I need to make sure that my workforce is getting trained, educated, and skilled for that situation. The problem with this is that AI is running so much faster. It is running at bloody lightning speed, and reactions from the government or training or whatever would be much slower. You have to really scale up those efforts very, very quickly. AI will create opportunities without a doubt, but AI is also going to create challenges in societies like India. Say like how you're going to have fake information, fake news, fake information, fake profiles, fake everything. So there is so much that happens. So how do you stop that kind of a thing? How AI can possibly dumb down people is also going to be very dangerous. In fact, right now in universities, people are using AI to do their assignments. Are you really learning?
We would never do something like that here.
That's what is going to happen. And so that dumbing down of people is also going to happen. You are going to effectively kill the whole purpose of education. So AI can be very dangerous that way as well. In fact, there was I'm forgetting who the Nobel laureate was. He recently said that if I don't think there is any charm in science that is left because of the rise of AI or something of that sort. So I don't remember that statement correctly, but there's something.
Can I take this in a slightly different direction? So China and the US are really competing in AI and seem to want to dominate maybe what's available in the world. Is India going to be in this race?
I think India can be in the race, but does India have the what I call investment capacity to do that? So if you really want to create those, look at the kind of investments that have actually gone into those, creating those large language models or whatever you call for AI and things.
The investments that have happened in the US are crazy. The investments that have happened in China are absolutely crazy. Like, can India do it? Possibly not. Can you build something on top of it? Absolutely, yes. So I think for India, what India can do is create unique solutions on top of what has already been created, and some solutions for India. And India can do that. There are some very smart young people who can do some unique set of things on top of. Can I use AI to solve for certain set of challenges? Say like AI, I think is going to be a great thing for diagnostics. Saying how do I create those medical usage for that? India is, as each one of us knows, India is very diverse, 650,000 villages. Can I have a doctor in all those 650,000 villages? Exceedingly difficult. But can I have a support system? Can I have a nurse there? Yes. Can the person go there and get diagnosed through the AI mechanism, putting in the parameters or whatever? Absolutely, yes. So there can be some unique solutions that can get created. We have a challenge of, say, foundational learning in India. Foundational learning in terms of like giving school education to everybody, quality school education. Can I use AI to do that? Possibly, yes. Do we have a solution right now? Not right now. If we have a solution, yes, that could possibly be complicated. Because, like, how do I teach mathematical and language skills to young kids? Can I use a computer to do that? There are those questions that will always arise. But there are some solutions which are getting tested. But if you're able to do it, you can solve for some huge developmental challenges in India.
So in that regard, India, like the United States, wants to build up its manufacturing sector. In the US, okay, it had hollowed out. In India, there had never really been the strength in manufacturing, especially advanced manufacturing around semiconductors, for instance. So do you think that for the development of highly qualified personnel, is it going to focus more on things like manufacturing or on things like where basically doing precise work and being reliable is a critical point? Or will it go more toward the AI area?
So I think, like Richard, this is a very important developmental trajectory question for India as to what path should it actually take. Like if I talk about manufacturing in the world right now, and the way we really look at it, Europe is very good at precision engineering or precision manufacturing. China is exceedingly good at mass manufacturing, and heavy industries, US is very good. And India is possibly, if it has to get into that race, then what is that area that India needs to get into is a very, very important question. There are some areas in which India has done exceedingly well, say automotives, without a doubt. But like what China has done over the last few years is something absolutely startling. Say you go to a place called Dalian, and there is this one factory in Dalian which manufactures close to about 8 billion buttons. The buttons on my shirt. 8 billion of them. Like, come on, what is that business? 8 billion buttons in one single bloody city is crazy. So should India do something like this? There's already somebody manufacturing 8 billion. Can you go to that scale or whatever? Possibly not. So you have to find some unique areas where you can manufacture. But yes, I think India's strength has always been in services, without a doubt. India has done very well in services. And India can continue to grow in that area. And that is why I see AI as a huge opportunity for India.
Okay.
But I think if we want to win in that race, we will have to invest in education. And that is where, when I said gross enrollment ratios, like we need to go for our higher education, more investments in higher education, more investment in skilling, and it should happen at war footing. Right now, my budgets are very low. I need to improve my budgets there. If I'm able to do that, yes,
Okay.
future exists.
Go ahead, Yuna.
Yes, thank you, Professor, for providing so much information. Takes a while to digest. So you mentioned the workforce issue. So what is the root cause of that workforce issue? And you said only 6% of the talents here in the United States, India will come back. So why?
Why? Oh, I think you want a brutal, honest answer? You like, any one of you has a gun? If they don't have it, I can give that answer. Most of the Indians are obsessed with the white man. They want to be endorsed by a white man. right? And that is why they are here. They cannot believe in themselves in terms of making a contribution in the place of their birth. That is what it is.
Okay, I've got to put out a disclaimer. The opinions of the speaker are the speaker. They do not reflect Stanford. As long as I say that, I think we're safe.
No, what I'm saying is, as an Indian, I feel very appalled. I would love to see people who get graduated here to come back to my country, to really work there. You know, like, but then of course, India is not possibly able to provide right opportunity, those kind of things. So that's the whole thing. We need to provide for those opportunities as well. But I think if you don't come back, you don't create those opportunities. China has been able to do that. China.
The government paid a lot of money to attract the talents come back.
Of course, we need to do that. We need to exactly do that. We need to create institutions where we are able to do that.
Did your government did that?
They've not done it. They should do it.